the session. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to week 4 of our Training Tuesday sessions of 2021. My name is Jim Lewis, and I'm a Customer Success Manager at SkyBitz. Thank you all for attending today's session. So we hope that these 1-hour sessions will improve your level of understanding within the Insight tool in order to bolster your confidence in using our best-in-class user interface to its full potential. The intent of the trainings is to provide a live demonstration environment with as few PowerPoint slides as possible. So just a few housekeeping items before we dive in. We have muted all participant lines, so we do not have any background noise. If you have muted yourself and want to ask a question later, you must unmute yourself. We are not able to do that for you. We have factored in time for Q&A. You may also type questions in the chat as the session progresses. All sessions are being recorded and will be available for playback via the SkyBitz YouTube channel. So we really encourage you to check out our channel. We have, besides the previous training sessions, we have other industry content that you might find valuable and helpful in your jobs. So please, check out the SkyBitz YouTube channel. Okay, so in today's session, I'm going to cover how Insight, via a few key reports, provides you with key performance benchmarks to help you measure both the performance of your whole fleet as well as individual assets. So first, we're going to start at a high level with your complete fleet, and then we'll work down into how you can track and look at individual assets and basically get information that you need to take action. So I'm going to go ahead and shift now to Insight. Okay, so I've now pulled up the SkyBitz, our engineering demo account for Insight. So everyone should see the Insight screen. And what I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to pull up one asset right here in the asset search at the top right. I'm going to go ahead and hit go. And then we're going to go down and look at the reporting history. So you can see from the map the kind of the breadcrumbs with this unit, where it's been in the Chicago area. So your SkyBitz units provide you with a wealth of information. And just looking at this one unit here, we can see, we're going to look at some of the key events. We had a stop event on February the 11th. And then before that, we had some, we had motion or moving, events here. And going all the way down to the start event right here on February the 11th at 9:05 a.m. So you can see for this particular unit, some of the key data. It started on February 11th at 9:05. It came to a stop, same date, 11:46 a.m. Various landmark information is on the right where it's been. Then we see that this particular asset has been sitting idle since the 11th. So the last report was actually this morning at around 10 o'clock in the morning. So the challenge here is that you have a lot of great information that your SkyBitz units are providing you. But how do you kind of put all this data together and make sense of it and figure out, well, how am I doing? Because I know for this particular asset, it's been sitting for the past 5 days. which generally is not a good thing, right? Because you want your assets out and about and moving around. Now, maybe there's a good reason for it, who knows? But the whole point is that you have lots of data here that you can utilize. And as I said, the challenge is how do we do it? And so what I'm going to do is take you to a couple of reports that basically do this number crunching and analysis for you, and will provide you with data that you can then use to take action. So first of all, we're going to go to Analyze Assets. And we're going to go down to Report Scheduler. And we're going to select Monthly Reports. And next, you'll see this screen. Now, the middle part here where my cursor is, these scheduled reports, if you haven't run anything here, this is going to be blank for you until you actually select a report and run it. I've been, using this information, so these reports are showing up here on my screen. So a little bit of background. So first of all, a great way to assess the performance of your fleet and assets is reviewing the idle time for your fleet. So this is basically a measurement of the time when your trailers are sitting. And it's a widely used metric in the industry. And for the most part, with a few exceptions, most companies are striving to maximize use of assets and minimize idle time. There's certainly exceptions to this. If you're a leasing company, your focus is leasing trailers, and if your customer, once they have that trailer, if it sits, they don't use it, you're not worried about that. However, it is very helpful to share that type of information with your clients so they know that they can measure and track. Another example would be is if you have assets that are going to construction sites that might sit for a long time. But outside of that, most of the kind of the typical drive-in use across the industry, you want to have your assets moving. And hence, the idle time is a very good measurement there. So what we're going to do here, going over to the left side, is we're going to pick the average idle time for all assets. That's the report we're going to look at. We're going to go ahead and leave previous calendar month. So today's February the 16th. So what that means is from January the 1st to the 31st is the period that we're going to be looking at for the idle time for all of our assets. And then you have an option about the report schedule. You can do one time. You can set this up to be monthly recurring, meaning you would get an email every month with this report. We're going to go ahead and leave it as one time for now. And then you would select request. And then what will happen, I'm not going to do it here because it's already run, is the report will show up here. Now, what you'll notice is that when you first run it, you'll probably see a message like not available because the engine's running, hasn't been generated yet. But once you see dates populated here, run date, request date, then it's good to select. So we're going to go ahead and just pick this one at the bottom. I'm going to select here. And then you have the option of downloading this report, which is very helpful. For the purposes of the training, I'm just going to stick to the display. Okay, so you've run the report, and what jumps out is you get a very nice summary box here at the top. And also, kind of going above, just to remind you, the report type, this is the average idle time for all assets. We see the report period, January the 1st to the 31st, and when we ran this report just a few minutes, few seconds ago. So looking at this report, you get in the summary box, you get your total number of mobile terminals. Now mobile terminals is basically your SkyBitz units. So how many units do you have? And what will be relevant to this report is really this next line, which is the total mobile terminals idle at least once during the report period. So that's only going to capture those assets that have been idle during that report period. Then we get the average total idle time, the average number of stops, and then we get the average idle time per stop, and this is in days. And now these numbers, because this is the training site, you just please keep in mind they're very, very off. From looking at various customer accounts, I can tell you the average idle time per stop, most times it's in like a 1 to maybe a 1.5 day range. I've seen it as low as about 0.7. I've seen it as high as 2 days, over that. But again, because this is just a demo training site here, the numbers are a little bit skewed. So I would hope no one sees anything quite like 16.34. But the point is, you now have a measurement of how your assets across your whole fleet, when they are idle, what amount of time is it taking for them? Basically think of it as you've come to a stop, you've delivered your load. How long does it take for that trailer to get back on the road again? And as I said, typically you're probably going to see something in the 1 to 1.5 day range. But the whole point is you can measure this and then look for ways to improve it. So how do you do that? And just to kind of go back to how these numbers are calculated in the report, the average total idle time, if we go down below here, this is your report detail. So this is going to have all of the your assets, and what you see here in this third column is the total idle time in days over that period. So this particular asset, as I said, again, this is demo data, so you're going to have some high numbers here. It's been sitting for 31 days. You have the number of stops, and then it calculates the average idle time per stop in days for each asset. So what happens though on the summary is everything gets total, your total idle time, and then basically it gets divided by the number of assets that are part of the report to come up with the average. So that's high average of 30.84. Same with number of stops. So stops are going to be anytime a stop event is registered with your unit. Kind of going back to the beginning when I was sharing that one particular reporting history for that one asset where we saw start and stop. So the stops, again, same thing, they're totaled up and divided by the number of assets to get your average number of stops. And then simply the 30.84 is divided by 1.89 to get you to your average idle time per stop. So then what you can do, once you have this information, you say, okay, I know how what my fleet average idle time per stop is. I want to improve that. So how do I improve it? The first step is really looking at that total idle time and lowering that. So then it becomes, well, how do you lower it? So really the key here is looking at your assets and identifying the ones that have that high idle time and asking questions and digging into it. And this is where you would take this information, you could share it with your dispatch team and find out why are certain assets sitting for an extended amount of time. So that's really kind of how you would want to approach this report. The other, what you can do further to kind of drill down here to improve it is look at, I said this report is more at the fleet level, but if we want to dig down at the individual asset level, what we can do is pull up another report. So in this case, we're going to go to Analyze Assets, and we're going to go to Current Idle Time. And we have here, we can show all assets idle, and there's a drop down. So we could say, okay, let's look at, do we have anything that's been idle for 30 days or more? That's a high number. And then we can also specify here that have reported a position within the last 7 days. And so this is important because if you do have units that say, perhaps they're not reporting, maybe there's some other type of issue, you can exclude that by just focusing on those units that are, that have reported a position within the last 7 days. And then we're just going to simply hit display. So now we see here for our list of assets, we have 5 assets that have been idle for 30 or more days. And we can, look at this and, again, as I was saying, this gives you actionable information. So you can, start asking questions about, well, why are these assets sitting? Are they being repaired? Is something else going on? Perhaps did we sell this trailer? Is it not still part of our inventory? So, very useful information here to help you drill down and see what's going on with your assets. So another report that I wanted to share, also more at the asset level, is the idle history report. So if we go down again, Analyze Assets, we're going to select idle history. And in this case, we're going to look at all assets. Now, keep in mind, you also have the option to look at specific groups. So if any of you have set up your assets and put them into groups, and there's one group that you're interested in, you can also, run this based on the group. So you have that ability as well. But for the report period, we're going to go ahead and do that same month of January. And we're going to go ahead and hit display. So now we get a report, and you have the option of downloading it, and it's actually much easier reviewing it if you do download it. I'm just going to stay on the report here on the screen for the training purposes. So this is going to show you a list of all of your assets, and basically by the idle history, it's going to have the start and end time for your idle records here. So if we just look at, we're just going to look at one asset ID and everything is grouped together here. So for number 306, and I'm just going to go down to the bottom where it started. And the other thing to keep in mind is when you run it for a specific period, so we specified the 1st through the 31st of January, you'll notice that this trailer was actually idle starting on December 23rd until January the 6th. But what's registered for idle time is only the time in January. So it's, a little over 5.5 days here. It's not counting the time in December because our report specifications were January the 1st through the 31st. So that's how, just want to make sure you understand that. But what's helpful here is we can then see, just for looking at this one asset, because we've determined that perhaps this asset, you're not happy with the performance. Why is the idle time high? What did it do over the course of January? So this report is going to give you a real nice summary of the idle time here. So, at the beginning of the month, it was sitting. Then we see it, it did have some movement. The idle time was low, only about, a little over a day, half a day, less than a day. But then we hit January the 11th, and then it sat again all the way through February the 5th. And again, because we're only looking at the January reporting period, so, basically about the last 20 days or so of January are counted here. But, again, the idea here is you can look at this asset and say, well, quickly, why did it sit for 20 days at this SD Pennsylvania landmark? What was going on here? So, it gives you some nice information that you can look at and further analyze and, to help you make decisions. Okay, and so then the other thing I wanted to point out as well with the average idle time report is if you go to report scheduler, analyze assets, report scheduler, and you go to ad hoc reports, you actually have the ability here to extend that report duration. So everything we looked at before was based on a monthly report period. But in this case, you can specify a data range that is, the last 90 days. Basically, you can go back and run. So if you wanted to get like a quarterly view of how you're doing, it's the same report, just simply you're able to adjust the time back to 90 days to run, and then the email should be whatever your Insight account is set up. If not, you would just need to override and put your email address in and hit run now, and then that report, you would get a notification via email and you would be able to access it. So just wanted to mention that. So another great way, we talked about kind of looking at the fleet as a whole and getting some perspective on how you're performing and using that, average idle time per stop is a good metric. Another great way of looking at your whole fleet is via asset view. And this is a topic I talked in depth on 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to just kind of touch on it briefly and show you how you can use it in terms of KPIs and your performance right now. So how do we get there? We just go to analyze or locate assets, asset view. And we're just going to look at installed units, and then we're going to pick a group here because of this being the training site. And then we're going to leave all these other filters alone. We're just going to go ahead and hit submit. We have the map, and again, this was all information I talked about 2 weeks ago. But what we're going to do is go right to the asset list, right here at the top right of the map. Okay, so now you have everything in this particular group, all of your assets listed here, and what you can do is utilize this dormancy widget right at the top here, right above your list, and you instantly get a very good view of how your fleet is performing as it relates to dormancy. So, what this is telling us is, as of right now, when we just ran this, how many of your trailers have been sitting dormant over, and the first one is, more than 7 days in the red, 3 to 7 in the orange, and then 0 to 3 in the green, with the lower number, basically reflecting a positive, right? Because as we talked about, the lower the time of your trailer sitting, that's a positive. You want them moving. But as you can see, looking at this, you can quickly, just total up your numbers here and come up with percentages of how your fleet as a whole is doing as it relates to dormancy. And what you can further do to, taking the next step, once you say, okay, I've got a big, a bunch here. I didn't expect to see 8 trailers that have been sitting for that long, is you can actually just drill right down into that detail by selecting this red bar here. So what will happen is everything now, all of your data, the map, the asset list below is now limited to those high dormancy assets. And then what you can do more to drill down is these columns here in the asset list, they're sortable. So we can sort it so we have our highest number of dormant days right at the top. So again, this is all about giving you actionable data that you can use to take the next step and say, well, again, why are they sitting? Who do I need to call? What's going on with these assets? So it's a really great way of quickly we approached it at the high level. We saw how we were doing. Saw that we had a bunch of trailers, 8 out of the 23 that are been sitting an extended time, and now we've been able to drill right down into those. We have our asset ID, all the details, and then now we can go investigate these trailers. Okay. And really the same also applies to utilization as well. Well, the next widget, where again your fleet is broken up, and this is based. These are trailers that have moved in the last 7 days, and the numbers are based on hours. But again, and this is the reverse of what we were just looking at with dormancy, where low is not what we want. We want high here. But again, this is another way of quickly looking at all your assets and seeing, how are you performing? How are you doing? Okay. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to shift back to our monthly reports. And what I wanted to do now is share another perspective on looking at this data and analyzing your performance. And that's taking into account your landmarks. So these are, the landmarks that you've set up, might be your own terminals, if you, as a customer, or maybe it's a customer location where you're delivering frequently to. But everyone has landmarks set up for their own reasons to help track assets. So one of the great things that you can get from Insight as well is an average idle time for all of your landmarks. So in this case, we can go in here and we're going to select average idle time, all landmarks. We're going to do the previous calendar month like we did before. A one-time report, and then this one, again, I'm not going to request it. It's already been generated here. We have an average idle time for all landmarks. I'm just going to go ahead and select it, and then we're going to display it. Okay, so now you have information that's summarizing the idle time across all of your landmarks. So, again, the same information, same setup as the previous report. We have the description, you have the date that this report pertains to, the 1st through the 31st. We have the total idle time in days listed here in the summary, the number of stops, and then simply, the calculation is the total idle time in days divided by number of stops gives you your average total idle time per stop, which is 21.66 in this case. And then if we, scroll down, we get some, really good information about each of the landmarks that pertain to this account. So we can see, which, in some cases, the average idle time is 31 days. So that's not so great, right? Then we see other ones that are lower. But the nice thing here is you can look at this per location and see what can you do to drive improvements here. So maybe it's you have a customer that is holding your trailers a little bit longer than they should be. So you have data here that you can, if you're comparing to other customers and say, well, why am I spending twice as long at this location when it's, in essence, I'm doing the same thing at another location. So this gives you a lot of great information at the landmark level of the average idle time per stop, using that as your benchmark, metric. And what you can do too is you can drill down into this. So if I look at, for example, the SD Pennsylvania landmark, so you get the detail behind this. So you see the summary stats just related to this landmark right here. So the average idle time per stop was 13.96 days. And then you say again, okay, well, how can I drive improvements here? And it's looking at that total idle time, which is the third column here. And you have your list here. These are the 8 assets, or well, actually not 8, because some of these were in and out of this landmark where you had multiple stops, is why you see them more than once, like 306 and S-3. But again, you have data here that you can take action on. So if you think about that reporting history that we looked at in the beginning with that whole conglomeration of data, and then you look at this where everything has been broken down, summarized, you have really quick, useful data that you can look at and take action on. Okay. So I guess I would say at this point we can open up the session for any questions that anyone might have.
All right, thanks, Jim. So at this point, we don't have the online questions, but if you do have a question, feel free to raise your hand in the control panel of your screen, or click the I have a question marker, the question mark button, and we'll go ahead and get to your question. I don't see any questions, Jim, so I'll go ahead and throw it over to you.
Okay. So just to, that concludes the training session, but a few things before we wrap up. One thing that we wanted to bring to your attention, make sure you're aware of, is our help icon in Sight. And you'll see it right at the bottom where my cursor is. I'm just going to select it. And you get some really good information here. You can access our installation guides here, the previous training, the Training Tuesdays data is here as well. So you can, see these sessions that have been, recorded. So you have a lot of, good information right here on this, this help button. And last but not, we have some training videos, webinar videos. There's a contact us as well. And then what you can also do is you can move this around as well. So if you want to put it on the side of your screen, bring it back, you can do that. And then the other thing we wanted to point out too is that we have a Show Me How tutorial in Insight as well. So I just want to quickly review that with you. If we go to Locate Assets, Asset View, you'll see the Show Me How right here. And whenever you see this, you can always click on these and you'll get some instructions. So a little bit about Asset View, then you just hit Next. Then you get, a recommendation about starting with 2 filters. We'll just go ahead and follow what it's recommending here. And then we're going to go ahead and hit Submit. So it's telling us we're going to see all our results on the map. And then additional comments about refining your filters here. We'll just go ahead and hit Next. Instructions about hitting the asset or landmark list here. So you have, real nice detailed instructions step by step on how to use, various features and Insight with the Show Me How. And then you can just click Done when you're done doing that. Okay. Let me just go back now to the PowerPoint. So, one of the things I wanted to mention too, so in order for our team to ensure we're providing you with information that's important to you in running your business, we would appreciate if you would take the time immediately following the webinar to fill out a survey. It will only take you a few minutes. So if you can just please do that. And then I also wanted to mention, talk a little bit about next week's session. So next week's session is going to be a panel discussion with our customer experience leadership team. And so you'll get, those folks, you'll get to be introduced to them. And also you have an opportunity to ask some questions. And what we're requesting is if you have any questions you'd like to ask, if you could just either send those to your respective customer success managers or directly to Ira Stern. So the email is listed, right here. So just would appreciate if you do that before the session so we can prepare and have have as productive a meeting as possible. So we'd like to want to thank everyone for attending today's session. These sessions are about you, our partners, and helping you leverage the powerful tools we provide. If you have any recommendations or ideas for future session content, please let us know and we'll be happy to put that together. So thanks everyone for attending. Really appreciate it.